Hello, it's Harry from Monday Sporty with Toby and Danny Pinto from the Cell Cow Pod. It's great to have
Hello.
you. I think we're on episode 12 or 13. I'm losing count, but this is Portugal, which is a big episode, and it's great to know that the squad's out. So we're going to go straight into it. And I mean, Toby said it himself earlier. Where else can you start than the main man? He may not be the main man for Portugal, but the main man for world football, Cristiano Ronaldo. What are your thoughts on his inclusion in the team and his role in the team?
Well, for me, it's getting closer to the end, and first off, I appreciate you both having me on the pod.
Thank you.
It's obviously closer to the end than it is to the beginning. But with that said, one of the biggest things that I thought was a detriment to Portugal in the World Cup just 18, 19 months ago, whatever it was, and at the end of 22, was that it was the whole fiasco with Ronaldo with Man U, and he was now out of contract. He did not have a team to train with. He wasn't getting proper football time on the field. He is getting time on the field now. I'm not going to say that the Saudi League is the top league in this world, because all three of us know that it's not. But in terms of form, he's in a much better spot than he was at the World Cup. And his inclusion, I mean, it wasn't going to be a surprise, guys. It's not that it's an automatic as it used to be, but his inclusion, given that, again, Saudi League be damned, he's banging 40 goals in a season. I think his call is merited, and we'll see what kind of tournament Cristiano Ronaldo has coming up in about a month's time.
And what about you, Toby? Would
Well,
you start him?
I personally, I wouldn't start him. But I wanted to ask Danny, what's the opinion in Portugal? Because, as I say, personally, I don't think he's worth a start anymore. I think you've got better options. Diogo Jota, for example, for Liverpool. I think he's a much more all-round player. He does so much more for the team, and arguably, he's a better finisher. Well, not a better finisher, but he's going to get more chances because he's got that. He's younger. He's got more speed. What do you think?
For me, Diogo Jota is a good option, but what Diogo Jota showed this in the last 6 months is that his health and his fitness is an issue. So I think throwing him in right away in the starting lineup, not that it couldn't work. I mean, we've seen in a small window, and I think that's why I think there's a lot of excitement with this national team, this Portuguese national team, the last year or two, is you're seeing like this wave of new talent coming through, right? And Diogo Jota is part of that. Gonçalo Ramos made the big move to PSG, although I think that move maybe was a year too soon, given that who was ahead of him. But obviously now with Mbappe likely going to Real, that could be a big opportunity for Gonçalo Ramos next season. But in terms of this calendar or this tournament, the one thing Ronaldo is always is fit and ready. And what he is still is a presence on the field. He isn't the same player that he was before, but you're also not going to, lag off of him if you're a defender. He's still going to be the one that has all the attention, or most of the attention, I should say, of the opposing defense. So what that could open up is it can open up, lanes for a guy like Rafael Leão. Open up a guy like for Diogo Jota if they're playing two up top. So I still think he could be the world's greatest decoy in this tournament. And it's such, and I mean that with no disrespect to Ronaldo. He is the greatest player Portugal has ever produced. He is one of the greatest players of all time. You could argue the greatest. I'll leave that up to everybody else. But what he is still is a commander of attention, both on and off the field. But on the pitch, I think he's still going to be a problem for a defense, given what he's done in his career.
And I think the interesting thing, sorry, I'll let you come to you in a minute, Toby, but the interesting thing is I was shocked when I looked at this Portugal side to see how strong it was. I mean, Leao's a fantastic player. He's one of the most dynamic individuals I've seen out of the emerging talent recently. I think the only thing with his Milan season is he could have done a bit more. He could have had a bit more end products at times this season. But that I don't know what you think to that. But also Bruno Fernandes, I'm a United fan, I must admit. His season, he's been the best player in a very difficult side. And I must admit, I hadn't watched as many games as I'd like to, and I went to Old Trafford and I heard the fans cheering his name, and I was like, I thought we weren't sure if we were keeping him, and then I've seen over the course of the last few weeks, he is the best team in that, and he would also walk into many teams in the world, if not every team in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, Bruno's been great, and I think it's a very important international tournament for Bruno coming up. I think we saw a little bit of it in the World Cup, the last international tournament, where you can slowly see that not so much a passing of the guard, but just who the main man in that lineup is for Portugal now. So when he's not in there, the void that used to be there when Ronaldo wasn't, you kind of start seeing that a little bit with Bruno Fernandes. Now he's slowly getting there. He's not there yet, but I think this could be a great opportunity for him with this tournament. Portugal is loaded on both sides in each phase of the game. But it's all about putting it together, which they haven't done since 2016 on that magical run. So we'll see how it goes. But I think in terms of depth and quality, I think Portugal has it in spades.
And Toby, did you want to come in there?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say, we've talked about the striker position. We've talked about Bruno Fernandes, who I imagine is going to be playing in that role behind the striker. But there is even an argument that he could fill that striker's role and play as a false nine, as he has been doing for Manchester United recently. And we've talked about the left-hand side, Leao, who's, I agree with both of you that he's one of the most exciting talents in Europe. On the right, I imagine it will be Bernardo Silva. But the one thing I'd say about Bernardo is he's an amazing player, and he's one of, if not the best player in that squad, in my opinion. When you see him for City, he's an incredible talent. But he's not good. He's not going to run in behind. He's not fast. He's not going to make those dynamic movements like Rafael Leao on the other side. So do you think, in terms of the balance of the team, does it work with Leao on one wing and Bernardo on the other, and then somebody like Ronaldo up top, or do you need more threat in behind?
I don't know if you need more threat. I think it might be easy to maybe prepare for Portugal, knowing what kind of pace you're going to have on the left-hand side with Leao, and then what kind of player where it's a bit of a slower pace, but a more of a strategic, cerebral kind of look at things from Bernardo Silva. For years, Portuguese fans have begged Fernando Santos before, or Fernando Santos, and then and now not so much with Roberto Martinez, but to move Bernardo Silva into that 10 role for this team, be the distributor. I think at this point, football's become very fluid, almost positionless at some point. So while he may start on paper on the right, he'll always tuck in. You can see Bruno go out to the right a little bit. A guy like Vitinha, who I'm very excited about seeing this summer, had a great season with PSG. He can also on a whim just go down that right side. And you also got to remember Roberto Martinez can sometimes play with three in the back and then have the wing backs of guys like João Cancelo on that right side. The left side, if everything is ticking right, the left side of Rafael Leão with Nuno Mendes could be brutal to defend against. Again, I think it's more positionless than anything, especially up top. Maybe with the exception of Ronaldo playing striker, but and maybe Leão on the wing. But there's a lot of options that Roberto Martinez has at his disposal, and I think he's in a good position given the group, the potential knockout draw to take Portugal fairly deep in this tournament.
And you mentioned that midfield role with Vitinha. Palhinha has obviously played for Fulham for a while now, and he had a really good season last year. He was linked with a move to Bayern Munich that didn't quite materialise. And
Harry, he was in Germany ready to sign and then left. Those pictures that came out when that happened, it was unbelievable.
It seems like that's affected him because his form, by all accounts, hasn't been as strong. Is that a concern? Because he was looking like a real talent again in that midfield role.
You know what? I don't know if it's impacted him. I think that when you're playing, when you're the quality of player that he is, and you have now completed a second season with Fulham. Harry, I don't know if if it impacted him, but I think he is a automatic lock in the Portugal lineup. Given what they want to play sometimes with a back three, he is a perfect fourth, quote unquote, defender there in the middle of the pitch. Even if they go to back four, he is such a good defensive midfielder. And I think he's on a move. He's going to be on the move this summer for sure. But I think he is one of the most important pieces to this Portuguese lineup, because all we hear about Portugal, the pundits and everything, and the sexy talk is Ronaldo and the offense and the attack and Bruno and Bernardo. But if they don't have a guy like Palhinha in that back or in that midfield, kind of anchoring things down, it may not work. And I think Palhinha is one of the most important pieces to Portugal's potential success in this tournament, because if he holds it down like he's capable of, even in the Euros 4 years ago, well, I guess now 3 years ago, COVID just screws up all the timelines here, but that group with Portugal and Germany and France, that France game was almost like a coming out party for João Palhinha. And I think in terms of quality, that hasn't digressed at all. And I think he's going to be a guy who is going to feature quite prominently in the Portuguese lineup and in Portugal's success this summer.
And let me just jump in.
Yeah, I'll let Toby jump in.
I was just going to completely agree. And I slightly disagree that Palhinha had an off season with Fulham. I think I saw the stats, and he was still the highest tackler, or that he had the most tackles in the entire league for the second season in a row, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, I think he was incredible for Fulham. I think it just didn't show up as well because the rest of the Fulham side didn't play as well. I mean, I don't quite know how Fulham got him, to be honest, because he's 28 years old now, and he could walk into almost any midfield in the world. I think there's a couple I wouldn't put him in, but as an Arsenal fan, I would take him in as certainly as an option for us. He's a great player.
Yeah, the thing with him is that, and the transfer fee was ridiculously low too. I think it was in the 20s. I'd have to double check, but yeah, he is someone that if you have anchoring your midfield, you're going to be in a good spot. And again, I think he leads the league in tackles because he plays for Fulham. There's a lot of defense that needs to be played when you're playing for Fulham. No disrespect to them, it's just the reality of the Marcus Silva side. But yeah, I think he too is one of these players that could have a really solid tournament, which he could definitely use to make a big time move to a big time European side this summer.
And I'll let Toby get into the defence and goalkeeping positions in a minute, but it sounds like what you're saying, and maybe what I didn't give him credit for this season, but maybe more so when I watched him last season, is for this Portuguese side, he's almost like a Rodri. He makes the rest of the team tick and allows those offensive players to go out and do their stuff, knowing that they've got a strong linchpin of their side who can dictate the play, but also mop up the play as well. So, yeah, it does sound like he is more influential than I gave him credit for still to this team. But Toby, have you got any thoughts on or any questions rather about the keeping and defensive position?
Yeah, I mean, well, in my head, Diogo Costa is a shoo-in in goal, and then I wanted to ask you about the starting back, or the back two. As you mentioned, it's possible there'll be a back three at some point in this tournament. Inacio from Sporting Lisbon has been getting a lot of plaudits lately. And when I've seen videos of him, he's been top class. And as a left-footed centre-back, he's one of those sort of rare breeds these days. And he looks like a top player. And then naturally, Premier League bias perhaps, but Ruben Diaz is up there with some of the best centre-backs in the world. So for me, that's what, when I look at it on paper, that's the starting back two. But how do you see it?
The back two is a tough one for me, because I've written off Pep, I think, about 3-4 times, and just like in the Godfather 3, just when I thought he was out, they pull him back in, but he gets pulled in because he deserves it. the guy is 41 years old and is still playing high-level football. Now, the concern I have for him more than anything, it's not about the quality of his play. It's he has gotten, as we all get older, you pick up a knock maybe a few more times than normal. That knock all of a sudden becomes a little lengthier to come back from. And I think, Father Time is undefeated. And at some point, we're not going to see Pep. We're not going to see Ronaldo in a Portuguese national team shirt. But do I think he is still good enough to play in an international tournament for Portugal? Yeah, I do. I do think that for the first time in a long time, the depth at center back for Portugal is as good as I can ever remember. For years, we were thinking of who's going to eventually pair with Pep, who's going to eventually take over for Pep. Pep might outlast everybody at this point, but you have a guy like Ruben Dias who made that big move from Benfica to Man City, won the Player of the Year his first year there, and has been great ever since. Did not have a great World Cup, but I still think very solid and one of the top center backs in the world. You have a Gonçalo Inácio who is, I think, one of the top up and coming young center backs in the world, as well as Antonio Silva from Benfica. I think he's 19, 20 years old. Made his debut at 18 with the national team at the World Cup as well. Played fairly well in his limited role during that tournament, but I think the defense might be the most the toughest maybe to decide on or kind of predict based on health, based on form, based on tactics, because I think Ruben Dias is probably the only one I can cement in as a starter, depending on what Roberto Martinez wants to do. And then you also have the options on the fullback side, which is, do you play João Cancelo on the right or do you play him on the left? And then have Diogo Dalot on the right from Manchester United. If Nuno Mendes is ready to go and he's healthy, who do you play at right? Because as good as João Cancelo can be, his prowess is more on the offensive side of things than it is on the defensive side of things. So would you play a Diogo Dalot in terms of a little bit more defense on the right hand side? Again, a lot of different choices to make. It's a good problem to have instead of being forced, instead of having your hand forced at certain points. But yeah, Roberto Martinez is in charge of a very talented squad, but he does have to make the right decisions. I think on a game by game basis, because I think that the depth of a national team of the quality of Portugal, of England, of Spain, of Italy, when you have too much, that can sometimes almost kind of be a detriment to your success, because now it's like, well, who do I leave out? Or so it's a good and a bad thing, but it's more good, obviously.
And the last thing for me, I don't know if Toby's got any final questions before I bring things to a close, but that your talk of the strongness of the strength. Sorry, strongness not a word. The strength of the defense is throwing me back to William Carvalho and Ferreira and Pepe probably still in the 2006 World Cup and the Ronaldo game against England, and it's sort of giving me a bit of nightmares. It's nostalgia, and I'm thinking it's happy nostalgia.
Harry, not me. I enjoyed it.
I thought it was a happy nostalgia. I was thinking, okay, they're Chelsea, but I was like, that was when I was sort of getting into football properly. Carvalho, Ferreira, those sort of players. And then I was like, that was why I remember Carvalho in a Portuguese shirt. But anyway, any final questions or any final remarks from anyone?
I just wanted to say about the group. On paper, Portugal have got a really, really friendly group. It looks like they'll coast through that. But I don't know, any potential sticking points in that group, do you think, Danny?
There shouldn't be, but and here. So I think before we started recording, or maybe it was right at the beginning here. A lot of positive coming out of the Portuguese team, I think. But I think by nature, the P in Portugal stands for pessimism, because we always think something bad is going to happen, or whatever the case is. The entire qualification process was so un-Portuguese for this tournament. Again, the group was not easy, or the group was not hard. It was very easy on paper. But in the past, Portugal has found a way to make it harder on themselves than it needs to be. Prime example was 2016. They got in as the third place team on 3 draws, and then somehow decided, you know what? I don't like playing 90 minutes. I love playing 120 and giving all their fans heart attacks upon heart attacks. But they somehow found a way to win. Now, I think that is very much the exception, not the rule. You should not build a winning formula that way. But with that said, the quality of this team and the manner in which the team is playing now is something that fans of this national side have been kind of wanting for a few years, given the vast talent that the team has, especially on the offensive side of things. So I think, in terms of, like, for me, I think anything less than a semifinal berth would be a very disappointing run for this talent to present to the footballing world. The group is there to be had. If everything breaks the way it could, you could see I would say a favorable draw in the knockouts, with, I think, a very doable road to the semifinals. Then obviously all bets are off there, but we'll see. Again, it's exciting, and especially given that this is the first tournament after the Fernando Santos era, a new way of doing things. It should be interesting to see how this team responds in an international tournament, especially for Roberto Martinez, because Roberto Martinez, he took Belgium, I think, 2018 to the semifinals, but overall it seemed like it was a disappointing reign over there, given that they were ranked number 1 for so long. So I think Portugal comes in number 5, number 6 in the world into this tournament, went undefeated in qualifying, have some of the best players in the world. This could also be a kind of a redemption story for Roberto Martinez as well. So a lot of storylines with this Portuguese national team, but the number one thing is if they play their game, they'll be very, very hard to stop, for sure.
Yeah, I think Roberto Martinez has a bit of a reputation for being an attacking manager, and I'd say the strength in that Belgian squad was perhaps, well, I mean, he had a lot of attacking talent there as well, but I think without a doubt this Portugal squad's more or is stronger in terms of the squad as a whole. But I mean, his reputation in England is a bit hit and miss. He showed very good potential in his coaching, but then he really didn't quite live up to it. And then I think we've all found it quite surprising that he's got these huge international
I think folks at Wigan love him. Folks at Wigan love him. I actually have a question for both of you guys. You guys reached out to me, and I greatly appreciate that, and I've had a great time on the pod here. But what are your guys' thoughts on Portugal and Harry, or sorry, Toby? That jersey, gotta love it.
Okay.
Gotta love it. No trophies this year for us, but gotta love it. But what are your guys' thoughts on the team and how you think, or how far you think they can go?
I think it really surprised me when I saw that Portuguese squad, and I realised they are the dark horse of the tournament, because everyone talks about England and France, but I think maybe because Jota's been injured as well, maybe because Bruno Fernandes' form has been recent, maybe because Ronaldo, you always don't see him, and then you see him when he's scoring and you forget he's still about. Pepe as well, when he played against Arsenal, that was a surprise too. I think when you look at it in its totality, it does actually think there's a bit of a fear element as an opposition, but also an excitement to see them play. Whereas before, I think I associate 2016 so strongly with a negative style of play. And then obviously the Fernando Santos turmoil as well with Ronaldo. I think I just hadn't really considered them as a threat and considered you as a threat. And now I certainly do. But I'm also relishing the challenge too.
Yeah, I think they're coming off right now. I just found the Caesar sports book in Las Vegas. Portugal has the 4th best odds on winning the tournament. England is at plus 300. France is at 400. Germany at 550, which I think is kind of a little high for them, but I mean they're hosting too, so you got to give that advantage too. And then Portugal and Spain are both at plus 800. So yeah, I mean they're up there in terms of the betting odds. I think the last tournament they were at plus 1200. I think at the World Cup, but Yeah, we'll see what happens. But Toby, what about you?
Well, to be honest, on paper, like I echo what Harry said. On paper, their squad is incredible, and there's really no weakness in that team. Like you've got a really solid defense, in my opinion. The fullbacks, as you said, they get up, good attacking fullbacks. Perhaps a bit susceptible defensively. As we talked about, Palhinha midfield incredible. Bruno Fernandes, one of the best players in the Premier League this season. Bernardo Silva the same. And then you've got Ronaldo, who's Ronaldo, and Leao, who's brilliant on the wing. But I just think, I mean, as I said before, as an Arsenal fan, I'm not Ronaldo's biggest fan. And I just think that Portugal might have shot themselves in the foot a bit with the whole Ronaldo thing, because it's always about him. It's never about the team. It's always about Ronaldo. And I think he'll start, and I don't think he should start. And I think in the end, that might be what holds them back, because I think they need to move on. I think they needed to say after that World Cup in Qatar, right, goodbye Ronaldo. This is the new generation's time to shine. He's stuck around, and whilst he's there, it's going to be the Ronaldo show. And I think that will somehow lead to Portugal's demise at this tournament.
You know, I mentioned something similar. I believe it was maybe the second Luxembourg match where he was off he was off because he had 2 yellow cards during qualification, and I think the scoreline ended up being like 9-0 for Portugal. And I in a tweet that I thought was as innocuous as it could possibly be, I said maybe we should start thinking about this team going forward without Ronaldo, and not solely based on the Luxembourg game, because I could probably find some guys on the playing football on a Sunday 2 miles down the road from my house that could probably give Luxembourg a fight. Again, no disrespect to them, but actually that's probably a lot of disrespect after I just said what I said. But it was, the ball moves more, it's more fluid. Is it better? That's really the argument. Is the team better without him? And I think what the last couple of years has proven is that question isn't as far, or isn't as easy to answer as it would have been 5-6 years ago, where is the team better with Ronaldo? No. That's not the thinking anymore with as many people as it used to be. Again, I still think he has his place on this national team. I think I think he's more of a distraction if he comes off the bench, honestly, Toby, than if he starts, because then it's like, here's what you're going to be doing the entire time as you're at the game. You're doing this. You're like, when's he coming in? We need a goal. Is Roberto Martinez going to put him in? And it's like, yeah, I get that, but I think, like, I just don't think of him ever as a good sub, and I think he could, but I still think he could put in a good quality 60-70 minutes. And see where it goes from there. But I think he's an automatic starter simply because I think he'd be a terrible sub, and that's just kind of where I'm at with that. I just want to leave you guys with one thing. You mentioned Toby. You mentioned Diogo Costa, the keeper for Porto, who is going to be the undoubted number one for Portugal. If you guys remember the opening game in the World Cup against Cameroon, where Portugal was kind of coasting. And he made a really big mistake that could have cost Portugal a win. I don't know if he's fully recovered from that in a Portugal shirt. He's a great goalkeeper, has been great for Porto for the last few years. I'm sure he's going to have a big time move this summer as well. I'm very interested to see how this tournament goes for him, given that he really wasn't tested in qualifying at all. I think in qualifying, Portugal gave up only 2 goals and not many shots on goal. So I think his play is a very underrated importance to the success of Portugal, because I still think in his mind, and again, this is just me on the outside here, he may still be kind of hung up on that near mistake that he made, because I don't think he was ever comfortable again in the rest of the tournament. And given that he hasn't been tested in qualifying, I'm going to be very interested to see how he plays in this tournament for Portugal. That's for sure.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's everything, and I've got to say this has been one of the favourite bits of content I've done in a long time. So thank you very much, Danny. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Really enjoyed your insight and really enjoyed your take on things as well. So, and obviously thanks as ever, Toby. It's always a pleasure to have your knowledge as well. So thank you very much, everyone. And make sure if you're listening this, if you made it this far and you see the little ticker of the thing, make sure you like and subscribe, and also check out the Seller Cow podcast as well and follow them on all socials too. So thank you very much, everyone.